Well, it's not called a crisis for nothing when a nation is thrown into a blackout twice in 2 days. We understand that there's been a system collapse twice in 2 days. And my colleague did let you know that we were going to be expecting the Regulatory Commission on the program this morning. Well, they're here. They stand in the gap between yourself and the power companies, be they generation, transmission, and distribution. We have with us this morning Mr. Michael Faloshe, who is the Assistant General Manager, Public Affairs Department of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning. I was just teasing him just before we got on set that, I was asking if he slept well, whether the electricity blackout also affected him as well. So did it affect you?
What's the general problem?
Meaning it affected you, right? But, I mean, you will have a clearer understanding of what is happening in the sector. A system collapse twice in 48 hours or less than 48 hours is not a very pleasant scenario. What is going on?
Well, let me thank you, Mrs. Makwe Yusuf, for having me in the studio, and good morning, Nigerians. Let me start by saying that system collapse is not a citizen of Nigeria. It's a mechanical issue and it could happen. But there is something about investment, there is about maintenance, there is about capacity that could have accounted for this. I will explain to you that about 80% of the nation's capacity, power capacity, is thermal, and 20% is hydro. And you can bear witness to the fact that for about the last time we had the rain on a sustainable basis should be some 4 or 5 months back. So that explains why the hydropower plants, they are trying their best, even though you've seen some narratives in the media blaming them, but they should be commended in actual fact because they've been able to maintain their power plants even at the, not at the optimal level, but to fill in the gap. Now, for the power plant that accounted for the 80% of the generation capacity, about 4 of them are responsible for the baseline, the bulk of the power that we receive.
The baseline is what percentage?
It's about 1,000 or thereabout.
1,000 megawatts?
More than that, yeah.
Okay, so that accounts for about what, 20%?
Of the entire capacity, yes. Now. So we're talking about 20% of 80% now, which yes. Is more. So by the time you have the hydros not operating at the optimal level, then you have 3 of the base power plants having issue. We have, I think, Opai has issue with vandalism. Before now, Shell Afam 6 has been slated for maintenance. Then Calabar, Iwobo, was slated for pigging. That's the pipeline that supplies the gas to the stations. You have to remove the liquid in the system, otherwise the power plant will be damaged. All these things were happening just about the same time, not for the fault of anybody. The issue of vandalism, you are not going to blame the regulator, neither are you going to blame the power plant. That's our social challenge. It's a social malady that the government is trying to address. Shell power plant has been slated for maintenance long before now. And if you don't maintain the plant at the time you are supposed to maintain it, you'll be paying more and it could lead to collapse of the power plant itself. So by the time you remove the capacity of these 3 power plants, about 1,000 of the capacity is already out. And this is like a perfect storm situation. You can't blame anybody for this. However, assuming we have adequate capacity, assuming we have excess capacity, perhaps maybe if one plant is down, others could have come in. Even if we are operating at our threshold of 4,000, 4,500, at no point in time will all of us, 200 million Nigerians, if we hooked on to the power plant, we can't all have light at the same time because there is not enough capacity. But the capacity that we have, we now have this challenge of vandalism, maintenance of 2 of those power plants. That's what has accounted for that. As at this moment, I think the pigging at the power plant be completed by March 21st. Then the repair work on the vandalized pipeline, I think that one has been completed. And the power plant, as at the last time that I checked, was doing about 235 megawatts. So it's ramping up gradually to attain 375, which is its optimal capacity. So those are the issues that accounted for the challenge that we have. Normally, February, March is not always the best time for us because of the hydro capacity. But as I said earlier, the hydro power plants, they've been performing magic, so to say, to make sure that they at least stand in the gap, so to use the word of
well, standing in the gap doesn't look like it's enough right now, because the system, I mean, these are not our words. We understand that the system collapsed,
as Dr. Uni said earlier, many things could have accounted for system collapse. And as a regulator, we don't play to the gallery. When there's a system collapse, the system operator will notify us immediately.
Have you been notified?
We've been notified. And within 24 hours, a report will be submitted. The one that's happened yesterday, we've been notified. We'll be expecting reports to know what causes it. But naturally, what we call system collapse is when there is imbalance in the system, whether either from the side of consumption, from generation, or anywhere along the value chain. If there is imbalance, then the system can collapse.
So, from what you have told me now, and told Nigerians, you've talked about how the baseline companies for the thermal power generators, that some of them have vandalism affecting them, some had scheduled maintenance, and all of this was happening almost at the same time. And that affected about 1,000 megawatts plus, which was supposed to be on the grid. From what we understand, we have capacity for at least 7,000 to 8,000 megawatts. That's what we've been told.
Of generation.
Of generation. We understand our transmission can wheel as much as it's still a little unsettled, but between 5,000, let's just believe that 5,000 at the minimum. So let us even say that 1,000 plus is off the grid as we speak. What happened to the remaining at least maybe 3-5 that is supposed to be on the grid? That's
what I will explain to you, that at this point in time, at this period of the year, you are not expecting the hydro at their optimal level.
Yes, but the hydro, what do they really contribute? If they're contributing about 20%.
20%, yes.
Yes, 20% of maybe 5,000. Is it 20% of what the transmission companies can wheel, or is it 20%
of
our generation capacity?
Yeah.
So let us assume 20% of 7,000. Is that correct?
You see, you've narrated the scenario. From generation to transmission, the capacity is reducing, and by the time you get to distribution, you're talking about 5,000 megawatts. So by the time you remove 20%, which like more than 1,000 or thereabout, you remember, Egbin power plant, you reported it had issue. There was an accident there.
Egbin.
Yes, so, though they are working. A section of that plant is working.
Okay.
But they are not also working at optimal.
So when you say they are not, can you give us exact figures? What exactly is our hydro? What are our hydro companies currently contributing to the national grid?
So as at this moment, so I will not have the figures at this as we are talking.
But as at yesterday,
so as at on the 10th, Kanji was doing 382, Jeba was doing 327, Shiroro was doing 215. So
combined, maybe roughly about 1,000.
Yes.
You know, perhaps around that figure.
That's right.
What happened to that? It's not.
So it does. It does appear that you are assuming that there is nothing being generated outrightly. I've told you, we have a threshold of 4,005 or thereabouts. The baseline tower are not available. So by the time you had some of these issues together, you are left with about 2,000 thereabouts. So the moment you have that level, there will be crisis in the system, because you are talking about half of your capacity. It's not as if nothing is being generated outrightly. There are other power plants that are working.
Coincidentally, too, I mean, and you can tell us if this is also coincidence, but from what we can see, all of this is happening at the same time.
Yeah.
On the 13th, you just saw the briefing by the generation companies of Nigeria just before they came to us, you know, talking about how they are being owed over ₦1 trillion and that they need the entire need of FX for the maintenance of their plants. It does look like, I don't know, that was not included in that report, but we did hear that if they were not paid a huge chunk of their money, something to keep them going, they were also going to shut down. And people think that perhaps this could be as a result of what we're saying. The 13th is just 3 days ago. That was when that press briefing was done. Did NERC see that?
Well, we have a position on not joining issue with any of our licenses on the pages of newspaper. Regulatory issue, you don't play to the gallery. So whoever is talking on whoever's capacity, we give a license to individual companies, not to an association. And our position, you will never see CBN debating with First Bank or Zenith Bank or whoever. But the fact of the matter is that we are serious with our job. We are addressing to those issues that has been put before the commission, and we are on top of every situation to make sure that all power plants are operating as a going concern. That somebody is owed is a trade issue. I mean, there is no business that you don't have somebody owing somebody. You have to. I mean, it's about you are selling and buying at any point in time. Even the malam selling at your gate, there are times you say, okay, I'll give you your money tomorrow morning. So it does happen. So, but it doesn't mean that whoever is in charge, you go to sleep. Those issues are being addressed. So, but we have a position, as I said, that we don't join issue with our licensee or association.
You might not join issues, and I think that NERC reserves the right to do that. This is something that has now come to a public domain. The public is now aware of this, and it's something that is of concern to us because when the generation companies say they're owed this much money and they have not been paid, we know that MBET was set up as a stopgap measure to try and bridge that gap in funding for the generation companies. Now, we know that it's also very difficult for companies when they do not have money to keep going on as an operation. So we will certainly ask you what you're going to do about that so that the consumers are not affected by whatever action they decide to take as a union or as individual companies.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the regulatory issue is not about playing to the gallery. There is an issue of, there is a past sector recovery program of the federal government being supervised by the commission that is addressing to all these payment issue, and they have been attended to one after the other. The issue of MDA debt that was read by the earlier speaker, which is also an extension of whatever she's saying. As at this moment, or by the end of this month, about 40 billion naira will be settled out of about verified 80 billion naira MDA's debt. So that is an action that has been taken. But you will not expect a regulator to come on the pages of newspaper. We are going to. We follow actions and we make sure that our actions are carried out. We don't play to the gallery.
Well, this is what we have. I mean, we don't expect you to play to the gallery. What we expect is that you raise questions on our behalf when there are issues like this. I mean, system collapse is something that is serious. When an entire nation is thrown into a blackout scenario, it's something that, you know, the NERC should show that they are on top of their game.
Of course, that's what I've told you. We've settled, bills have been settled.
Yes, but
I've mentioned 40 billion and have been settled. So,
I know that. What I'm trying to say...
the PSR or PSRP, it was attending to some of those issues about Genco's debt that she raised.
PSRP?
Past Sector Recovery Program.
Okay. Was
attending, they verified their bills, and before 2015, their bills were not being paid in full. But from 2015 to 2016, their bills are being paid between 100 and 85%.
Is there a monitoring of this situation from NERC before they arise? Because, I mean, this briefing, as I did mention, was done on Monday. It would mean that I would not think that the generation companies will just decide that, you know, they want to do a press briefing. There must have been some engagement with the NERC, with the regulator, to say this is becoming unbearable. I imagine that's what they would have done.
You see, within the regulatory landscape, there are means of communication. Let me tell you for free, by next week, Monday or Tuesday, the commission will be having what we call stakeholders meeting of the industry, like what we call the bankers committee. So there is a line of communication. But if there's an association that is speaking on behalf of whoever, it is also within the exercise of their fundamental human rights. And the regulator is not expected to be joining free with association. We are not regulating association. We are regulating companies, and we have a means of communicating with them. Some of the issues if the issue of MDA debt, it was addressed to the level of the highest authority in the country. And as of today, 40 billion out of 80 billion has been settled. And gradually like that, the debt will be settled. The PSRP is to attend to the issue being raised by the generators.
Let me clarify this. Are you saying that this press briefing which happened on Monday has nothing to do with the system collapse which we've currently experienced twice in 48 hours?
I think you should put that question to. I've explained to you what caused the...
No, I'm asking. I mean...
No, I can't address that. There may be a reason why they are addressing their issue. So I've explained to you...
Let us forget the union now. I'm just saying, as individual companies, because you talked about the baseline companies, which you're aware of, but we also know that the generation companies are more than the baseline companies, which you have mentioned, that there are a few other generation companies, and we do not know if those generation companies were also producing. Were they producing?
They are producing, but you see, the challenge with some of those ones is they do not have, they get gas, most of them, they get gas on best endeavor basis. They do not have gas contract. So when you do not have gas contract, it means that the gas supplier supplies you as when I feel like.
Or as you pay.
As you pay. So not necessarily if you already have a contract of somebody you are supposed to supply gas, and even if you are carrying your cash now, and the gas has been contracted, it is not going to disappoint the contracted power and give you. So it may not be about as you pay per se.
Okay, so what I want to know is this. Are you saying that you do not see any, because...
what I will say is this.
For lack of a better phrase, the witch cried, or the owl cried the night before, and the child died in the morning.
They are businessmen.
Yes.
And I think some issues need to be put at the front burner for whatever purpose and to achieve whatever purpose. They are businessmen, and their money, even to the last couple, matters to them. So, but as far as the regulator is concerned, all issues in the industry, we are attending to them. The issue of whether somebody is owed is a normal trade issue that somebody should be owed. But what you will need to be sure about is how and when am I going to be paid. So that's what will concern you as somebody being owed. So, and it's within their business right to do that.
Let me flip this to my colleague in Lagos, Ayo.
Thank you, Malpo. Well, the analogy Mr. Faloche gave the other time about the repayment, it's a little funny because, I mean, on the one hand, it's not 1 million naira that is being owed. It's not even 100 million. It's 1.6 trillion naira that's being owed, and it dates back to 2015. So I'm wondering how you want to address that one. But that's not my question. Now, Mr. Faloche, I'd like you to listen to this quote, this statement again.
If you check the PPA, for some of you that have been long in the sector, you know that the average PPA, that is a power purchase agreement, allows the generation companies to have a start-stop. When your machine will start and stop, no more than 20 times in a year, in 1 year. Now, the current experience we are having in Nigeria is the generation companies are made to start and stop for over 365 times in a year.
Is this something that is normal with the NERC? Is it okay with the NERC? And what's been done to checkmate this?
Well, some issues, well, it is abnormal that our system is like that. It's about investment issue. It's about the state of the network. And also, let me also clarify the fact that some issues are also being dramatized. As I said earlier, it is not our practice to join issue, number one, with association.
But is the facts correct or not? I think that's what's important here, Mr. Faloche. Just a second.
No. See, let me excuse me, please.
Let's look away from the association.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Can I speak, please?
Okay,
can
go
I
ahead.
Speak, please?
You
can.
can.
I speak?
You
You've
can.
asked
Go
me a
ahead.
question, so you don't interject.
Go ahead.
So, as I said earlier, it is true that our system is not stable. But the issue of 365 days, those are fact being dramatized.
So what is the current
It's more than
position?
20, but
what is the current...
The system.
Go ahead. What's the current position? If
Current
it's not
situation
up to
about what?
360.
Current
If
situation
it's
about
not
what?
up to 360.
I have told you.
What is the number?
Number of what now? We have
You
two
heard
system
her.
collapse recently.
Yes.
Yes, so what other figure do you want?
The start-stop number that she gave, she said it's not supposed to be more than 20, according to the PPA, which I'm sure you're aware of. And she says it's about 360. If it is not 360 from what you're saying, what is the number?
I think the issue here is about, for us to have stable power system and to have adequate supply. At the heart of this issue is the fact that, number one, we do not have adequate power. We do not have robust network. So there is no way there will not be stop and start issue being addressed. So, and for as long as you have not attained the starting level of investment, the issue will still keep on coming up. And this issue, as I said earlier, have been addressed as and when due, and the regulator is on top of his game.
Well, first, I'd like to commend you, really, for not shying away from these issues, for coming to speak to them. I think it's quite important for Nigerians to know what's going on. There's been the talk about a certain emergency meeting that was summoned by the Minister of Power. I'd like to know if the NERC was there, because that meeting was said to have been called to find a solution out of this. So do you have an inkling as to what is being done to get out of this? Because we don't want to hear about another collapse in another 24 or 48 hours.
Well, until we know the fact of the matter. Yesterday, the system collapse that happened yesterday, about 300 megawatts was thrown out of the system. But as I said earlier, that one happened after the meeting with the minister. The system is, as long as there is an imbalance in the system, either from the side of demand or supply side.
No, I understand. You've explained that part about why we're seeing a collapse.
Capacity.
Pardon me. I mean, you've tried to explain. No, you've explained that over and again because of our time. I'd just like you to give Nigerians some glimmer of hope, if there is any, regarding that meeting. At least there was one collapse before this one, and I imagine you've gotten the report. So what is the way out? What is being done, I mean, coming from that meeting with the Minister of Power?
The way out is to have enough investment in the system, and that is what the regulator is addressing. When you have enough capacity, you no longer be talking of system collapse. At the level at which we are, there is no way we will not have system collapse, but it's being addressed. That's what I've told you.
How long will it take to achieve that investment infrastructure? I imagine that doesn't take a few days. So is that a long-term solution? If it is, what is a short-term solution to this, and perhaps a mid-term solution?
Well, the short-term solution is to make sure that we have a contract-based industry. That is, those power generation companies that are getting gas on best endeavor basis. The Commission is working on a plan where the industry will be contract-based. So if the industry is contract-based, you know that when you supply, you must get your money. Then it will bring in some level of sanity into the network. Okay. And it will reduce the level of system collapse.
Is a rise in tariff also one of the solutions? Because it's been said that the tariffs are not cost reflective, and coming off the Minister of Finance saying that the subsidy has been removed gradually. Is that also a way to stabilize that sector and ensure that we get value?
Exactly, it's partly part of it, but not entirely. Tariff alone does not generate electricity, but it's addressing part of the challenges.
So was NERC really in the know as well in this, subsidy removal, tariff increase? Because there's meant to be a process. You have all this MITO and all of that. So were you in the know? Is it something you approved of? And now, we're seeing it happen.
Well, let me put that comment by the Minister of Finance in context. What was done was the fact that the DISCOs were told to clarify, to categorize their customers in 5 categories of A, B, C, D, E, which Dr. Oni was talking about the other time. People with 20 hours, 16 hours, 12 hours, 8 hours, and 4 hours capacity. After that had been done, the people who are on minimum of 20 hours generation were to pay. It's like what was done was, this is the cost of giving you 20 hours of electricity, and this is your bill, or this is the tariff at which you get this power. So this is the cost of giving you 16 hours. This is your tariff. So that one, in a way, reduced the level of subsidy in the system. So those who are on 4 hours are still being, in a way, being subsidized, in a way, because their cost may not be reflective of what it should be. But there is a caveat there. After the DISCOs have done this, they've also submitted a improvement plan to make sure that people are moved from E to D, from D to C, from C to B, and A gradually, so that the classification is not about whether rich or poor. It's about the status of capacity, or the status of the ability of equipment within your area. Because you are not going to, or they cannot categorize you as A, maybe because you are living in so and so place, and the capacity of infrastructure in your area cannot meet that capacity. So the purpose of that one is to say, okay, DISCOs, give us the status of your infrastructure. What can you do at this location? What can you do at this location? On the basis of that, the tariff were categorized. After that one, performance improvement plan was submitted by the DISCOs. So for these categories of customer, how do you move them over time to this level of capacity? And not just that, progressively as you go on, if you have put somebody on a band and you are unable to meet that band, you are going to refund for collecting that money. So
refund?
Yes, you're going to refund.
In the plan that they're submitting, right?
Yes.
Okay, because there were questions as to whether...
and what you are refunding, it's not about giving cash now. It's not about giving cash. You're going to refund in energy.
Let me quickly ask you this about calibration, because there are those who have also alleged that, oh, I'm still getting the same number of units when I buy, but it looks like my meter is running faster. And there were also times when distribution companies were, at least I got a few calls like that, distribution companies were calling to say, we need to come and change your meter. Now that meter is now expired. Obviously, I'm sure that they want to change it to something that runs faster. So tell us what should happen with calibration. When should people start saying, no, my meter looks like it's running too fast?
You see, the issue is this. There is no meter that is in the network that has not passed through test of NEMSA, that has been tested and certified. Sometimes when people say I've heard that story on many occasions, but I think 2 things they need to do. I doubt some of those stories, but I will not say that they are lying until when they have been submitted, when it has been subjected to technical test. I've seen instances where people make such allegations. By the time NEMSA comes around and tests the thing, that look, your allegation is unfounded. I've heard similar, because we deal with customer complaints. We've had it. By the time NEMSA comes around, the thing is tested, and some of the stories.
But you've also heard the distribution companies have been going around to change meters. Yes.
You see, if maybe depending on the lifetime of a meter is about 10 to 15 years. It's very possible that a meter is there, current is passing through, and is no longer counting. That's a possibility. But each case should be treated on its own merit. You are not going to say maybe a customer is lying or maybe the disco is wrong or right. The system, the machine is for him to calculate his money. So if he feels that the machine is not working properly, he has a right to put the, especially if the machine is now bad. You see some meters that are up to 30, 40 years old.
Yes.
You are not expecting them to work.
Not prepaid meters.
Analog meters.
Analog meters.
So
but these ones are prepaid meters.
Well,
they were changing prepaid meters.
Yeah, you know, some of this, the first generation of prepaid meters, they are more than 10 years old now. This, let me not mention company's name because I'm on. Some of them are more than 10 years, so it's not impossible that they may be having challenges. But as I said earlier, each case should be treated on its own merit. And if you are not satisfied, you approach the commission. First of all, tell NEMSA. NEMSA will come and they will come and test the meter.
Okay. So that's the process for those who are concerned about how their meters are currently running. But from what you know in terms of tariff increase, by how much percentage are those on Band A and Band B? Those who have experienced an increase, by what percentage did their tariff go up? Well,
you know, we have 11 companies. And you will not be talking of how nobody is paying average price. But you see in some locations, some Band A may be paying 56, some may be maybe for Abuja, maybe paying 56 or 65 or thereabout, maybe another one in Ikeja or Iko. So if you are talking of average, nobody pays average. We are talking of 11 companies. You are talking of...
Well, are the companies allowed to dictate what they want to charge now for the different bands?
I've told you, see, their production cost differs. Your operating environment differs. What service-based tariff has done is to say, okay, tell us the capacity of your infrastructure as respective locations. How many hours can you do? What is your operating cost? On the basis of that, tariffs are calculated.
So you do not have a maximum band that, you know, beyond this, from what we know of the current capacity of the system, of the entire system, you cannot go beyond this. Do you have such a band?
No.
As a regulator?
You'll be talking of cost of production. You'll be talking of whether it's a due diligent cost and the cost that can be passed over. Take for instance, if you are bringing your cost of production and you're putting cost of buying, building a house for your CEO, that one is not part of cost of your production. So the regulator will not allow it. So every element of your cost will be examined before it's allowed to be passed over. So you are not going to put a ceiling, but the cost has to be the real cost of producing power.
Let me just clarify this last question. So this, because I know that before now, the distribution companies used to ask for a review of prices. They will say, oh, we're due for a review of prices, and it used to be the job of the NERC to do that.
That's right, yeah.
You no longer do that?
No, it's still there. You know, the tariff methodology that we have adopted is multi-year tariff order.
MITO?
MITO, yes. And MITO says at every 6 months, you do minor review. And every 5 years, you do major review. For instance, if the cost of production, even at a particular location, will not remain static over a period of time. So if in the course of your operation, maybe you are bringing in additional capacity, it's coming at a cost. For instance, if you are moving a customer from band D to C, it's coming at a cost. Okay, I'm buying additional transformer. I'm bringing in this number of poles. These things will come into your cost of production. And if part of your cost of production, somebody has to pay for it.
Okay. So they're allowed to increase their tariff before even the tariff review is due.
I have not said that. You submit your application to the regulator. It's also a number of months. I'm bringing in additional transformer. This is the cost. I'm bringing in so number of wire. It will be calculated. If the margin is at a certain level.
Mr. Faloshe, I appreciate your explanation. It's just that we're totally out of time. And I was just trying to quickly get out, whether or not in simple yes or no, whether you're still very much involved in price regulation.
We approve tariff.
Okay, you're still approving the tariff.
Yes,
of
if you
the
submit your
regulatory
application
company.
and you can defend it, then to be approved for you.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. Mr. Michael Faloshe is the Assistant General Manager, Public Affairs Department of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, and has been speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. Well, we tried to get as much questions as we could, but that's not happening. But thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. We'll take a break at this point, and we'll be moving to another issue that also concerns you, also on this energy crisis. Please stay with us.